We acknowledge that we come to learn and to grow, finding our true purpose in our life. Our life should be a process of joyous spiritual discovery and growth. Unfortunately, Western society is trying to do its best to stop you from doing so, forcing you to give all your time and wasted energy into being slaves to it. Almost from the time of birth, we begin hiding our true inner self away in order that we may adapt and survive in the outside Western world. This society as a whole is geared toward this end. Our families and peers teach us socially acceptable behavior. Our educational system teaches us language, math, science, the technical and social skills we need to sustain a materialistic, mammon, life. As adults, we are forced into a society of business and government geared towards materialism and maintaining the status quo of racism, where they make themselves everything. One blind and deceived generation produces another. Cycle of focusing only on the outer world continues. Rarely, especially in the early, formative years, are we taught inner development, with the emphasis on subjects such as intuition, the subconscious mind, self-esteem, self-awareness, or inner spiritual growth. Is it any wonder that the soul, inner self, becomes lost? There is no excuse. Make the time to find the mystery of your existence before your life vanishes into death. Where will your family, home, car, school and money, lover be? You weren't born merely to go to school, make money, have children and die. Why waste your time on countless detours? Why be forced to be in school and contribute to a society that doesn't care anything of you as a black person as long as you serve it? You build for those who hate you. Go straight into seeking your ancient ancestors. It is a race on the path to the deities. Some are sprinting, others are jogging, others running backwards, some of them never left the starting point. Your true purpose in life is to know who and what you are. Worldly temptations were given to you to develop discriminations. Will you prefer your sense pleasures, material pleasures, or will you choose deity? Worldly pleasures will give you endless troubles and difficulties. External things can never really belong to us. They are only lent to us for a very limited period until death, then you start again, and we will never find true strength in them, so why attach ourselves to them? When you leave this world, all that you will be taking is you, your soul. They say, as if you are not living right now. They say wrong again. Why do people bother to hold on to this earthly life? Because of ignorance. These people don't know how preferable other life is. A true student of the ancient Egyptian order thinks differently than the rest of people. Life to him on earth is a school, a place in which to do the work all have been assigned until such time as he graduates. He feels limited in this world, despised, crushed, denied in spite of his wiser judgment and keener vision. He knows why. He knows that once he has finished his mission on earth, he will live in perfect freedom, in eternity. Once his school is terminated on earth, he is ready to leave. No desire, no attachment to the worldly pleasures can get to him or retain him. Other people fall into the deception of what life offers them. They get caught up in schools, careers, cars, churches, money and sex, spend no time nourishing their very souls, like a mother nourishing her child in her womb. A true student thinks differently. He is here to do the works heaven sent him to do. He is therefore not interested in holding on to the pleasures of this world. He looks forward only to the freedom awaiting him in the hereafter. Look at that right here after death, knowing his physical body will return back to nature, which was only lent to him to outgrow. If one is to be a true student of the ancient Egyptian order, one must spend all of his time servicing our ancient Egyptian deities, not the god of this world, money or an unknown, unseen, unfelt, unproven spook. You have to make yourself chosen. No one can do it for you. No method of religious ceremony can extricate man. The ancient ones can only save you if you help yourself. The Netarot has a different method in accomplishing their work. There is no substitute for the Netarot divine and natural method. People make the judgment on themselves from the Netarot within them. Your judgment is either you choose to live in the truth or stay and hide in the blinding light world. Your life force, your very spirit, has been condensed into spirit sparks, each of which has been assigned to a man or woman. This divine spark, everlasting representative within every man, guarantees liberation through new Wapu. The day of graduation or judgment depends on how the soul judges itself with the love of the all and time truth within. It will be an entry to a new life through the re-evaluation of his or her former life. There will be a day of punishment for those who judge themselves unworthy. People make their judgments to where they will go after death according to how they have lived on earth. Man is the fashioner of his own fate. Man's destiny is self-created. The Netarot gave you the free will to choose how you will live on earth. Do not expect God, Jesus, Krishna, Allah or anyone or thing to judge you. All judgment is from the fire within. No one on earth can take anyone else's place, no one can learn for another, each person must develop himself until he attains purity and perfection, the perfection as Netta the Truth envisioned it. After this stage one will be a graduate of the ancient Egyptian order, they will receive the key. Each man by his actions, becomes the molder of his destiny. Whatever energy he puts out, wisely or unwisely, is set in motion, therefore it must return to him as time's starting point, like a circle completing itself, a snake with his own tail in its mouth. Every secret is told, every crime is punished, every virtue is rewarded, every wrong deed is returned to the individual. This truth is not for everyone, it is only for those who are ready to hear it. Destiny is responsible for the ones reading this message of truth. You have two choices, either you go along this evolutionary path towards spiritual knowledge and perfection, or delay it for longer periods until you have become a deserter. You should raise your hands and thank the ancient deities that you have found the truth and have been called, and hopefully chosen if you desire. If you are interested in finding out more about our mission, and searching for the ultimate truth that has been hidden from you for far too long, well, you have found the place. May the spirit of Nettarot guide you on your journey back to your true perfection. Now you are in the hand of your own. Your true family, the true creator, nature be a part of the great family. Everything flows out and in, everything has its tides, all things rise and fall, the pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right, is the measure of the swing to the left, rhythm compensates. The great fifth Egyptian doctrine, the doctrine of rhythm, embodies the truth that in everything there is manifested a measured motion, a to and from movement, a flow and inflow, a swing forward and backward, a pendulum-like movement, a tide-like ebb and flow, a high tide and a low tide, between the two poles manifest on the physical, mental or spiritual planes. The doctrine of rhythm is closely connected with the doctrine of polarity described in the preceding chapter. Rhythm manifests between the two poles established by the doctrine of polarity. This does not mean, however, that the pendulum of rhythm swings to the extreme poles, for this rarely happens. In fact, it is difficult to establish the extreme polar opposites in the majority of cases. But the swing is ever toward first one pole and then the other. There is always an action and reaction, an advance and a retreat, a rising and a sinking, manifested in all of the airs and phenomena of the universe. Suns, worlds, mortal, animals, plants, minerals, forces, energy, mind and matter, yes, even spirit, manifests this doctrine. The doctrine manifests in the creation and destruction of worlds, in the rise and fall of nations, in the life history of all things, and finally in the mental states of mortals. Beginning with the manifestations of spirit, of the all, it will be noticed that there is ever the outpouring and the indrawing, the outbreathing and inbreathing of Shiru, breath, as the Nuwapians worded. Universes are created, reach their extreme low point of materiality, and then begin their upward swing. Suns spring into being, and then their height of power being reached, the process of retrogression begins, and after eons they become dead masses of matter, awaiting another impulse which starts again their inner energies into activity, and a new solar sun life cycle is begun after the lunar, moon, death cycle. And thus it is with all the worlds, they are born, grow and die, only to be reborn. But the six ether beings, whose god is Sin of the Yaa-Nun cycle, has finally come to an end, never to return again. And thus it is with all the things of shape and form, like the heat level, the fire and the flame goes out, they swing from action to reaction, from birth to death, from activity to inactivity, and then back again. Thus it is with all living things, they are born, grow and die, and then are reborn in other forms. So it is with all great movements, creeds, fashions, religions, governments, nations, and all else. Birth, growth, maturity, decadence, death and then new birth. The swing of the pendulum is ever in evidence. Night follows day and day night. The pendulum swings from summer to winter, and then back again. The corpuscles, atoms, molecules, and all masses of matter, swing around the circle of their nature. There is no such thing as absolute rest, or cessation from movement, and all movement partakes of rhythm. The doctrine is of universal application. It may be applied to all phases of human activity. There is always the rhythmic swing from one pole to the other. The universal pendulum is ever in motion. The tides of life flow in and out, according to law. The doctrine of rhythm is well understood by modern science, and is considered a universal law as applied to material things. But the Egyptian carry the doctrine much further, and know that its manifestations and influence extend to the mental activities of mortals, and that it accounts for the bewildering succession of moods, feelings and other annoying and perplexing changes that we notice in ourselves. But the Egyptians, by studying the operations of this doctrine, have learned to escape some of its activities by transmutation. The Egyptian hierophants long since discovered that while the doctrine of rhythm was invariable, and ever in evidence in mental phenomena, still there were two planes of its manifestation so far as mental phenomena are concerned. They discovered that there were two general planes of consciousness, the lower and the higher, the overstanding of which fact enabled them to rise to the higher plane and thus escape the swing of the rhythmic pendulum, which manifested on the lower plane. In other words, the swing of the pendulum occurred on the unconscious plane, and the consciousness was not affected. This they call the law of neutralization. Its operations consist in the raising of the ego above the vibrations of the unconscious plane of mental activity, so that the negative swing of the pendulum is not manifested in consciousness, and therefore they are not affected. It is akin to rise above a thing and let it pass beneath you. The Egyptian hierophant, or advanced student, polarizes himself at the desired pole, and by a process akin to refusing to participate in the backward swing or, if you prefer, a denial of its influence over him, he stands firm in his polarized position, and allows the mental pendulum to swing back along the unconscious plane. All individuals who have attained any degree of self-mastery, accomplish this, more or less unknowingly, and by refusing to allow their moods and negative mental states to affect them, they apply the law of neutralization. The master, however, carries this to a much higher degree of proficiency, and by the use of his will he attains a degree of poise and mental firmness almost impossible of belief on the part of those who allow themselves to be swung backward and forward by the mental pendulum of moods and feelings. The importance of this will be appreciated by any thinking person who realizes what creatures of moods, feelings and emotion the majority of people are, and how little mastery of themselves they manifest. If you will stop and consider a moment, you will realize how much these swings of rhythm have affected you in your life, how a period of enthusiasm has been invariably followed by an opposite feeling and mood of depression. Likewise, your moods and periods of courage have been succeeded by equal moods of fear. And so it has ever been with the majority of persons, tides of feeling have ever risen and fallen with them, but they have never suspected the cause or reason of the mental phenomena. An overstanding of the workings of this doctrine will give one the key to the mastery of these rhythmic swings of feeling, and will enable them to know themselves better and to avoid being carried away by these inflows and outflows. The will is superior to the conscious manifestation of this doctrine, although the doctrine itself can never be destroyed. We may escape its effects, but the doctrine operates, nevertheless. The pendulum ever swings, although we may escape being carried along with it. There are other features of the operation of this doctrine of rhythm of which we wish to speak at this point. There comes into its operation that which is known as the law of compensation. One of the definitions or meanings of the word compensate is to counterbalance, which is the sense in which the Egyptians use the term. It is this law of compensation to which the sacred wisdom refers when it says, "The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left, rhythm compensates." The law of compensation is that the swing in one direction determines the swing in the opposite direction, or to the opposite pole, the one balances, or counterbalances the other. On the physical plane we see many examples of this law. The pendulum of the clock swings a certain distance to the right, and then an equal distance to the left. The seasons balance each other in the same way. The tides follow the same law. And the same law is manifested in all the phenomena of rhythm. The pendulum, with a short swing in one direction, has but a short swing in the other, while the long swing to the right invariably means the long swing to the left. An object hurled upward to a certain height has an equal distance to traverse on its return. The force with which a projectile is sent upward a mile is reproduced when the projectile returns to the Earth on its return journey. This law is constant on the physical plane, as reference to the standard authorities will show you. But the Egyptians carry it still further. They teach that a mortal's mental states are subject to the same law. The mortal who enjoys keenly, is subject to keen suffering, while they who feel but little pain is capable of feeling but little joy. The pig suffers but little mentally, and enjoys but little he is compensated. And on the other hand, there are other animals who enjoy keenly, but whose nervous organism and temperament cause them to suffer exquisite degrees of pain. And so it is with mortals. There are temperaments which permit of but low degrees of enjoyment, and equally low degrees of suffering, while there are others which permit the most intense enjoyment, but also the most intense suffering. The rule is that the capacity for pain and pleasure, in each individual, are balanced. The law of compensation is in full operation here. But the Egyptians go still further in this matter. They teach that before one is able to enjoy a certain degree of pleasure, they must swing as far, proportionately, toward the other pole of feeling. They hold, however, that the negative is precedent to the positive in this matter, that is to say that in experiencing a certain degree of pleasure it does not follow that he will have to pay up for it with a corresponding degree of pain. On the contrary, the pleasure is the rhythmic swing, according to the law of compensation, for a degree of pain previously experienced either in the present life, or in a previous incarnation. This throws a new knowledge on the problem of pain. The Egyptians regard the chain of life as continuous, and as forming a part of one life of the individual, so that in consequence the rhythmic swing is understood in this way, while it would be without meaning unless the truth of reincarnation is admitted. But the Egyptians claim that the Hierophant or advanced student is able, to a great degree, to escape the swing toward pain, by the process of neutralization before mentioned. By rising onto the higher plane of the ego, much of the experience that comes to those dwelling on the lower plane is avoided and escaped. The law of compensation plays an important part in the lives of men and women. It will be noticed that one generally pays the price of anything they possess or lack. If they have one thing, they lack another, the balance is struck. No one can keep their penny and have the bit of cake at the same time. Everything has its pleasant and unpleasant sides. The things that one gains are always paid for by the things that one loses. The rich possess much that the poor lack, while the poor often possess things that are beyond the reach of the rich. The millionaire may have the inclination toward feasting, and the wealth wherewith to secure all the dainties and luxuries of the table, while they lack the appetite to enjoy the same. They envy the appetite and digestion of the laborer who lacks the wealth and inclinations of the millionaire, and who gets more pleasure horn their plain food than the millionaire could obtain even if their appetite were not jaded, nor their digestion ruined, for the wants, habits and inclinations differ. And so it is through life. The law of compensation is ever in operation, striving to balance and counterbalance, and always succeeding in time, even though several lives may be required for the return swing of the pendulum of rhythm.